Hello, everybody. We're giving things away. It's what we do. LSS has enabled us. We have a couple giveaways to announce here. So this is going to be the in-person giveaways. There'll be the online giveaways that we're going to announce the week later after Pro Tour, and that's going to be for everybody. But we have a couple just for the people that are going to show up to Pro Tour. We want to meet as many of our viewers as we possibly can. And we have 4 winners. We're going to have 4 winners for this giveaway. So we are going to have skill testing questions. Just one. I'm going to have one, and Rob's going to have one. And we're going to give a set of prizes to whoever comes up and answers these questions to us in Pro Tour. And so, Rob, why don't you tell me your question?
So my question is going to be something a little more personal to me. It is something that has appeared on this channel maybe a few times at least. But I want you to give me the name of my dog. If you can answer that, you get a prize from me.
Yep, and your options for prizes are either playset of full art. Oh, there we go. Full art, extended art, whatever you want, kind of Herald of Rebirths.
Yep.
The other option of prize is one of our patented, not really patented.
Not patented.
Well, it kind of is. Spark of Genius playmats.
Yep.
Very limited printing of these.
Pick either or as your prize, or whatever's left, I guess, at the time if you answer the question as the
exactly. So the first person that comes up to Rob and answers it will get their choice. The second person to come up with Rob will get the remainder one. They don't have to take it, but that's how it is.
And Eric, you have a question as well, don't you?
I do. My question is not as personal, but what are the heroes we have not played in our videos before, in our gameplay videos? I'll give you a hint. There are 5 heroes we have not played in our video. If you can name those 5 or come up and correct me and say there's actually more, I'll take that too. That's completely okay. I also have, playset of Heralds and a Spark of Genius playmat. So the first person who comes up and answers it, who is a subscriber, of course, the conditions are you have to be a subscriber. You don't have to follow us on Twitter. However, we would appreciate it because not everyone has Twitter. But other than that, those will be the prizes. See everybody at the Pro Tour. Hopefully, as you can see, as many of you as possible. Bye for now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production, recording in the early morning, which is actually afternoon, Rob, and nighttime for Dimos. So you know what? That statement I make at the very end, it is actually applicable here. So we have another episode here that I'm joined with with Rob, my co-creator, co-caster, co-compatriot, co-commentator. Sure, let's use that order. And then we're joined by our special guest for the episode, Dimos Kaloupis, as you can see his beautiful face in the top right corner over there. He is a pretty established high-level casual, as he says himself, top 8 nationals with Oldhim, among other accolades. He loves to know everything you can about a couple really, really important classes here, which we're going to be talking to him about. Of course, we're going to be balancing it out. And this episode is mainly it's kind of a bit of a fusion. So by the time we're recording this, Pro Tour is next week, right? So Pro Tour is in a week and 3 days, and so everyone is busy grinding, testing new builds, blah 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 blah, all that. So I figured for everybody we should do a bit of a meta breakdown, a bit of a tier list. Our tier list is obviously not going to be like the most accurate based on literally everyone's opinion. Everyone has a different opinion. There's no proof of any tournament in the post-ban list era at the moment. And so there is actually no record of which to make this. However, my own testing and our games and what we've been hearing and seeing based on our own opinion and historical evidence from pre-ban. So that's kind of what we're going to be using here. It's more of a visual aid than like any kind of like, don't take this with a massive grain of salt. Please form your own opinions. This is just a bit of an aid, kind of like our deck list that we post up here. And so we're going to be going over kind of the CC list, kind of what our thoughts are on the meta, the heroes, and then we're going to be going into some predictions to see maybe some spicy meatballs that we can give to everybody in terms of opinions that maybe someone else has already, but maybe not. So without further ado here, we're going to start with call it the triangle, the Holy Trinity.
Sure,
Holy Triangle, the Trinity Force.
The holiest of the triangle points.
The holiest of the triangle. I'll start with Prism.
Prism? Why not?
Sure, let's start with Prism. So Prism here, I think, as the her job in pre-ban list era here was to smash Le Guardian, right? Mm-hmm. Prism has historically a very good matchup at the Guardian, very good matchup at the Oldhim, good matchup into Bravo, and the Aura build had a good matchup into Starvo as well. I say good because it depends on who you ask and how good the players are and blah blah blah, and like the Starvo build itself and the Prism build itself. But overall, the Aura build, like the main Aura strategy with a sideboard of some Red War Tunes, maybe some CNC pummels, stuff like that. That's the kind of build we're talking about. We're not talking about any other spicy builds here. And I think personally, Prism. The ban list didn't touch Prism, right? The ban list kind of touched everyone around Prism. Touched Viserai, touched Starvo.
Point to where the ban list touched you.
Point to where the ban list touched you. That's not going to be the title of the video, but now I'm considering it. So we're looking at Prism here. I'm gonna probably ask the thoughts. Let's ask Dimos' thoughts, and then we'll maybe come to some kind of rating here.
Yeah. Well, firstly, always glad to be on. I always
you didn't
enjoy
say anything. I don't know.
Guys.
I don't know why you waited till
no,
now.
I did not.
We were like, is he happy?
You were on such a good roll with the intro. I was an enraptured viewer, listening as I always do.
Pretty sure I screwed up like 3 different times, but thanks.
Keeps it interesting.
Welcome anyway. Yes, welcome.
My thoughts on Prism are, with the rest of the triangle between, Prism, Starvo, Runeblade of choice, is that the strength of her in the meta is going to be dependent on what people bring to the Pro Tour, right? Mm-hmm. If everybody shows up with Starvo, she's probably going to be pretty thrilled because he's got a lower density of 6 pops. He's generally blocking less. It's harder for him to get away with powerful 3-card hands anymore. And he doesn't have that, tempo reset on Awakening. Yeah. So if people are still showing up with Starvo, she's going to be really happy. On the other hand, if people are showing up with a lot of Channel Mount Heroic Briars, or maybe enough people try to sneak in a dash here or there, then it depends. I think our top tier is effectively going to be Prism, Starvo, Chane, and the ones that will float to the top are the person who wins rock, paper, scissors based on representation at Pro Tour.
Yeah, it's kind of like an ecosystem. Whereas if one point gets a little out of balance, then the whole thing kind of gets thrown out of whack, I guess, right? So they're keeping each other in check a little.
It's an ecosystem, but in this case, it's more like the coral reefs because we're screwing with it. It's dying slowly, right? It's because Starvo's going to be living legend. Soon. So he's at like 984, right? So I think Prism, I think A is fine. Like on the lower tier of A, I really don't like her into aggro. Like I've played a bunch of Prism into aggro.
Yeah,
Viserai aggro.
I was going to mention that exact same point.
Everything.
Right? Yeah,
like she is just you need to. Like turtling is just you have no armor. Like let's be real here. You have no armor, and you have a weapon that doesn't actually attack. And your basis upon winning those matchups is getting like some good heralds in and hoping that you can like clap back. But like if they're an aggro deck like Runeblade that actually has like or Dash that has some 6 powers, they just pop your heralds. So it's like very very difficult for Prism to quote unquote like fatigue decks that go very very fast, and that's historically been her weakness, and I don't think anything's changed.
Right. We've talked about how Prism suffers against the more aggro decks, I think one of our previous episodes, and with Starvo kind of weakening a bit, that allows more aggressive decks to come into the fold. We are lowering his defensive stats with the Edge of Autumn. It's
close. Autumn's Touch.
Thank you. Autumn's Touch now being out of the pick pool, so aggro decks are going to kind of rise a bit, is what we're expecting. So maybe Prism will probably suffer a little bit as well. Yeah. I'm sorry, Dimos, I cut you off there.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking I don't know if Prism will necessarily suffer in her results. I think she'll be more restricted in her deck building. Right, you're not going to be able to run the 27 auras and primarily defensive options that are what gets you past, or what was good against Starvo historically, right? I think now you are going to need to skew a little bit further into running a little bit more of those aggressive heralds.
Right.
Maybe you need more blue block 3 light illusionist cards to help bulk up things on the backside, things like that. So I think I think she'll still have very strong results because good Prism players always find ways to make these things work.
Hmm.
I just
Hmm.
think that the Prism decks will not be as standardized as they were during ProQuest season, right?
Yep.
Because the
I would
second,
agree with that.
yeah, I think there was a simultaneous independent discoveries where people went, "Ooh, I'll add the new good auras," and then, "Oh, I'll add a couple more because they work so well." And then within 2 weeks of events actually happening, everybody was on 27 auras. I think it'll be tough to get away with that still,
Hmm.
Hmm.
mainly because I don't think that is a plan that works into Rune Blades anymore, specifically into Chane. We've seen historically that Prism can effectively fatigue Chane if you're creative about going about
Yeah.
certain things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I think Chane has Prism's having to skew a little bit away from the build that lets her do that, and Chane has more tools that let him
Let's pull Chane in here.
uh,
We'll talk about Azov.
avoid fatigue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or yeah, avoid fatigue, or get around Arclight Sentinel, for example, and all these
Mhm.
other things, right? We're seeing lead the charge being way more standardized now.
Yeah.
Spellbound Creepers gets you around Arclight Sentinel. There's all these other different tricks of the trade. Plus, realistically speaking, if Prism's running auras that generally don't block super well,
Hmm.
and Chane's running into this with, the aggressive general Runeblade cards,
Yeah.
Revel, Skullhorn, or Skull Shrill, whatever it's
Shrill
called.
of Skull Form,
Um,
I think. Yeah.
those aggressive
Gorilla
ones.
Cellcorn, yeah.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't need to wait for his 8 Shackle Banish to come in for 30 damage
Yeah.
if he's popping, consistent 15s, 18s, whatever it is, with
Hmm.
just his normal Runeblade cards.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I think let's keep Prism on A. I think that's fine. We can move on to Chane.
Yeah.
Because we're already kind of like rolling into Chane.
It
So
was
Chane,
brought into discussion. Yeah.
historically Prism's nemesis all the way back from the call in Las Vegas, right? Where
Hmm.
Prism took it down. In the meta O chain, the meta La chain, right? When it was like 3/4 chain and everyone else was trying to beat chain.
Yep.
Obviously, it's come a little ways from that. The Seeds ban, the Everfest releasing a lot of new Runeblade cards, or
Hmm.
Illusionist cards, the new auras and such. The builds have definitely changed a bit, and a lot. Um, I think Chane. This is a hero I have definitely played quite a bit of. I've experimented with different builds. One of his main strengths in the meta going into Pro Tour is that, as far as a standardized list, I don't think there is one, and I don't think there ever has been one because he hasn't been represented high enough in the meta because of Viserai, which
Right.
historically pre-ban Viserai had a very good matchup in Chane. In my opinion, like it was very difficult for Chane to punch through the semi OTK strat with Skeleton Sonata because you just couldn't. It was very difficult, and Chane was definitely suppressed by Viserai. But now Viserai got a little bit of a neutering.
Hmm.
Took him to be spayed and neutered, and now Chane is coming out of the woodworks here in force.
Hmm.
And the nice thing about Chane is you have the I think everyone calls it pivot on a stick, and of course I'm talking about carry on husk, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so that piece of armor is definitely one of the best pieces of equipment in the game, right up there with like Crown of Seeds. Like these are like these meta hero defining pieces of armor where it's so good that it alone can make you want to play a hero, right? And for Chane, that is, you ever see a Chane main go to like some other aggro deck and be like, oh, wish I had like a nice 6 block that I could
Yep.
just throw and keep my 5 card hand, and like it's
But it's never just 6 block. It's always 10.
yeah. Well, I mean,
That's
look,
because Rune Blades have so much else that guards
when
so well.
when you're running an
And
equipment suite of 4 legendary armor, that's just how it works. They block for higher, and it's gonna take some time for the other classes to catch up here until Runeblade gets like some Fire Phoenix chest replacement or something. But for
Yep.
now, we're just talking about the current status, right? So I
Yeah.
think Chane,
So we know Chane
the
is
new
kind of
build,
favorable into Prism, right?
Chane is favored, just straight up favored.
Yeah.
It's fatiguing Chane. Even assuming that you're trying to fatigue Chane requires like a pretty big build change, which is like a massive meta call that you think you're going to see a lot of Chane, and
Right.
Gem might tell you to go fly a kite, you're going to see Starvo all day or something, right? So
Yeah.
it's not even that, but it's also to the matter of
Yeah.
Chane historically had also an issue with early shackle pressure. By early shackle pressure, I mean your shackle 1-2 turns were actually quite weak on average.
Yeah.
It was only until shackle 3-4 plus where you actually started to unlock more of that power with blood debts. However, a lot of the shackles tended to be missing because you were only running like 20 blood debt cards, right? And so you ran packages such as like Belittle Minnowism, which is still a very good package, especially into aggro, where you don't really care about shuffling your deck because you're not going for anti-fatigue, right?
Yeah.
You just get the resources and just go off. I mean, you still have Artivore, Puppetry, running things like Captain's Call, Go Against, Bavarian Skies, whatever. He has access to Runic Reclamation, super, super good into Prism. And he has the most flexible toolbox to deal with all the heroes, because his core deck, I think, is still very lean as far as like the mandatory, like your red boundings, your run unhallowed, like all those kind of card puppetries. It's very lean as far as your core deck. It's like a nice, like, when you're making a sandwich. Now I'm getting hungry here. You're making a sandwich, and you've got so many choices of your base meat. You got like a nice pastrami, maybe a prosciutto,
right?
And then you're looking at all the toppings after that. But your actual meat layer is already like quite nice and lean here. And so that's Chane is just a good sandwich. And what you have to do is decide what else you want in the sandwich. But you could add in you could add unmovables for the Starvo matchup. You can add time snaps for the Prism matchup. You can add time skippers if you're really scared of Prism for some reason. And you can add all of these kind of tools to like help you in the different matchups you think you need them the most, which is not, I don't think any other hero does that as well as Chane right now in the meta.
No,
and that's
definitely
why
not.
And that's why I think putting him in S tier is actually very relevant. The only reason why I wouldn't call him like God tier, like the old Starvo, like he's S and that's it. He's just best deck by far. Chane is very, very difficult to play. He might look kind of unga bunga, like you just just vomit your hand every single turn.
Yeah.
You can't do that into fatigue. You will lose. You have your own fatigue clock in the way of shackles. It's not just like fatiguing a regular aggro deck where like you pitch stack, you eventually get it back. It's like, oh, well, you pitch stack, but you actually end up banishing a lot of your pitch stack, right? In the later game. You are on your own clock. And so you do need to put a lot of reps into different fatigue matchups to actually be somewhat competent. And even then, in any given game, Chane can tell you, no, I'm going to banish all your good cards. That's just here. Shackle 3, 2 Art Wars, and a Puppetry. Deal with it.
Happens.
And then you're just like, or you're into Starvo, you side in unmovables and you banish all your immovables and you never get one and you just get spinaled to hell, right? It happens, and Chane has that. But ignoring all the RNG aspects, as a hero in the meta, I think he's still an S tier. So I don't know, Dimos, you agree with me, or am I up shit's creek here?
I think all the points you're making about Chane are very valid, right? He is hard to play, but that being said, Chane players have only gotten better since he's been released, right?
Hopefully.
The point you made about him having a very consistent build, Chane is one of the few heroes that can probably play, a pure aggro game or to his anti-fatigue strategy without using his whole sideboard. Like he needs so many fewer cards to swap in and out, right? Because realistically speaking, you're still running the red playable out of banish cards. It's just when you're playing anti-fatigue, you let them sit there for a while. And you're still running your blue action point generating go again non-attack action cards, even in the aggro matchups, because they're still your blue base, right? It's unfortunate that they block for 2, but at the end of the day, it's a price worth paying for the fact that you're saving 10 sideboard slots that let you, keep those options for unmovables versus time snaps versus whatever other tech you want to run for the matchup. Whether you want to run, some of the new Everfest talismans or trinkets, which by the way I think Chane is uniquely good at using, because he just gets so much value off of any zero cost go again non-attack action. Because you can still have a turn that costs 0 out of banish, right? So I agree with the points that you've made. I just think that my philosophy on this particular tier list is that his performance is very dependent on who else shows up. So as I said earlier, I think the triangle of Chane representing Runeblade versus Prism versus Starvo would all be roughly on the same tier, with basically whoever wins the representation matchup on the day popping up into S tier for that meta.
Okay.
So for that reason, I would put him on the same tier as Prism. I'm not necessarily
Just a bit
opposed to
higher up.
putting all three of them,
On the
all
S?
three of them in S or
Yeah.
in A, or whatever it may be. But I believe their supremacy is going to come down to representation, not necessarily the power of the cards where they are.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair
I
enough,
also
yeah.
think, Chane, Chane can do some wacky stuff with the new, just the good new Runeblade Majestics. Revel, Swarm and Gloomveil is really good on him.
Right.
I think you're looking at, maybe some people start playing a few more sneaky Rattlebones in to help float you between, the earlier mid points of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's expensive, but you're going to need a blue base in order to do some type of anti-fatigue, because there's a good chance that any Prism or any Starvo you play against might be trying to fatigue you, but they might also not be, because both of those decks have viable alternatives to that, right? I think we saw back in Road to National season, because that's when I saw the bulk of the Prism Chane matchups I've seen, that, Prism had viable strategies to do either. A couple of well-timed Heralds of Judgment, and you can start racing Chane. Same thing with Starvo. A couple opportunistically Starvo fused Guardian attacks. Husk stops one, but if you see one unmovable get banished a little bit early, you can probably gamble and go, you know what? I can force my way through, fight for tempo here. Those matchups, because each of those heroes has such good ability to pivot with little sideboard investment, I think makes the interplay within each match very interesting.
No, it's true.
And I think that's going to be a determining factor.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, that makes
maybe
sense.
In that case, we can bump them to S, because they will be the cream of the crop of this tier list, right? The top three, I guess.
I mean,
unless there's some spicy
S,
picks that come out of this discussion, but
I don't like putting everyone in S, because S to me is like Chane and Monarch meta, Briar and what, like they're just like overwhelmingly good.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay. So since they're balancing each other out a little bit, none of them is like the clear winner.
I would be I'd be okay with moving him to A, just on the higher side of A. That's fine with me.
Perfect.
Okay.
Speaking of
Viserai, my Viserai. Well, I say my Viserai. I didn't really play that much Viserai, but this man got attacked. He got attacked. They banned Skeleta. They banned him. It was a problem. Skeleta Sonata was gross. It was probably an oversight, but maybe not. But at the time, Skeleta was very fair.
It wasn't an oversight, because
at the time it was fair. At the time, it was fair. I totally agree. All you did is maybe a Rattlebones Ninth Blade was like your top end scenario, right? Which was still a strong turn. So I think
once right after they released Sonata Skeleta, I believe it was the Blitz. I believe it was in the it was in the Dev Blitz showcase that they've got online somewhere, in which Jason Chung debuted that was one of the first to show Sonata Skeleta. It just so happened that there weren't enough Runeblade attacks with Go Again. There weren't Creepers or Suede Hides yet. So what you ended up searching up was, the good hits that you wanted were Rouse and E-Strike and, things that are very expensive to play out.
Right.
So even though you were getting a lot of card advantage, you were paying 2 cards to play each attack. Whereas now that Runeblade has a lot more, basically zero cost Go-Agains and a lot more ways to generate action points, that if you add 3 attacks to your hand, they're all seeing the board. The odds that you actually need to pitch an extra card are pretty low if you're hitting, a Revel and then, I don't know, a Meet and Greet and something else really cheap, right? Or I should say something else that costs something, but you get to play free off of Skeleta, and then you follow up with the free ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, or sorry, and by Revel I mean Swarm and Gloom.
Yeah. I thought you meant that, but I wasn't going to comment.
In my head, they're very much the same.
Yeah.
In my head, they're basically the same.
Yeah.
There is zero cost Go Again that represents 4 damage.
Fair enough. Yes.
That's fair.
One's an attack, one's a non-attack. So.
So we look at Viserai. He clearly can't OTK anymore. So he's kind of relegated to the aggro tempo strategy, which is kind of one of the strategies he had at his availability before. Like he could do that before. Skeletal wasn't pivotal to that strategy. It just helped, but it wasn't absolutely needed. Sonata's not banned. He can still run Sonata if he wants to. Less use, but still could be pretty good because you can crack an Arcane and get Mean Greed go again, and all that kind of good stuff. But it is a non-attack, so trigger Viserai ability on stuff after the Sonata.
Yeah.
But I think that even as tempo, if you just run at people with like 9 Mauve, 9 Shrill, 9 like a Rainbow Mauve, just like, you know what I mean, Rob? Like you've done this in Blitz all the time. Like it's his specialty. So he's still super strong. Like I don't, his damage ceiling, like you're doing your low 20s instead of 35, 40.
Yeah.
Right. But like you can still pump out 20 damage plus. Like he's not by any means relegated to like the dumpster. Like he can still he can still run at Prism and destroy her. Like he's still favored into Prism.
Yeah, I think that the key
Runic
really
Reclamation,
is...
Swarming Gloomveil, Revel. These are all still amazing cards.
The key is losing the OTK strategy, right? He just can't
it
do
does,
that.
Yeah,
so into heroes that was really favorable against, like maybe more control heroes that they don't really care about your tempo as much. They can just block it out. It affects those matchups quite a bit, I would say.
Yeah, it affects your that matchup, but your control matchups. It also affects like your Starvo matchup, or the matchups where like you're not Chane. You don't have the husk to just be able to like brute force through a bunch of like on hits that actually do matter, right? So you never really had like, you ran things like unmovable in that matchup and tried to like OTK them. You never really tried to tempo through their on hits, right? And so nothing has kind of come in to replace that. I personally still think he is still quite strong in tempo. He's just more linear now, which is fine. I think that's still reasonable. I think B is actually a pretty fair place to put him. Where on B? I guess depends on who you ask, though.
Well, okay. I'm thinking about this from a very different perspective. Why would you play Viserai over any other Runeblade? Because realistically speaking, the trade-off that you're doing, unless he's a pet deck, at which point I understand he's cool, he's the original edgy one. It's great.
He's got a hood on, but think about it. But you're way back when you were like slugism ascendancying fools. Like we gotta.
Yeah, no, I love that stuff. That was brilliant. I absolutely adored it. Like I enjoy playing Viserai. I think he's super fun to play. Of the 3 Runeblades, he's definitely my favorite. However, if I were going to Pro Tour, which I'm not, and we're taking it very seriously, which I generally don't, why would I play Viserai over Briar or Chane? Why would getting 1 additional rune chant, or let's call it 2 or 3 additional rune chants on the big turns, at the sacrifice of the massive card pools and other advantages you get off of Chane and Briar, right? Am I willing to give up lightning cards and channel mount heroic in exchange for rune chants that can no longer Skeleta? Am I willing to, yes, it makes, things like Rune Flash good, and, they're probably not viable in Chane and Briar.
Right.
But is that worth it for what I'm giving up? My current assessment of the situation is not really. So wherever he is on the tier list, he's going to be after the other Runeblades by, a meaningful margin between them.
I like your caveats.
It's a good reason.
If I was going to Pro Tour, but I'm not, and if I were to take it seriously, which I usually am not, and I'm like, wow, you're really setting yourself up for
immediately tanking the credibility as we go down.
We'll shove him at B for now,
B, and we can maybe have him like lower.
We can move
B.
him later.
Yeah, we can move him later. We'll see where Briar fits.
We might as well finish the Runeblade trifecta. So let's roll on with Briar. So Briar, the lightning build was kind of killed with ball lightning being banned in the prior meta. By killed, I mean that you ran a lot of ball lightnings in that build, and your damage potential definitely went down a lot. And I think everyone started to realize taking advantage of that deck was not that hard, right? Yuki did it, the national championship, faced three Briars in top 8 and won the event, right? So
Yep.
Definitely not as flexible as some of the other like head honcho decks in the meta, like Chane and Starvo, in their prime. I say in their prime, right? Like, you know, pre ban or anything like that. So
Yep.
I think Briar has definitely moved on to a more channel mount focus, and a channel mount focus is, of course, using channel mount heroic, right?
Yep.
To buff your small attacks. They weren't that small to begin with, but your zero cost go agains. Even some of the ones that didn't have go again, you give go again with your embodiment of lightning because you played a lot of non attacks. Coming in with your earth package, trying to keep channel mount on for 1 turn, 2 turns if you're very lucky and very, very good, and you're able to pitch stack that way if that's your goal in the first place, and you're not just like going full ham immediately. It is very strong into just your average aggro deck. It puts out a lot of damage off fairly few amount of cards. Channel Mount is a very flexible card as far as it is Earth. So if you absolutely have to, and let's say you have Channel Mount out for a turn and you want to pitch another Channel Mount and another blue Earth card, you can actually keep the Channel Mount out for a second turn if you're using the resources for something like a Grasp. That being said, I think where Briar suffers is her ceiling is good. However, her entire game plan revolves around 3 cards in your deck. And yes, she can like you've seen this, Rob. Like you got your mountain range, right? The mountain range was at the bottom of the deck. It's like when you don't have it, you'll lose. Like you will lose. You just don't have that kind of damage output to like race.
She's very dependent
take a lot of those
on
hits.
Exactly.
She is, and I think she as well. She has like Runeblade armor, of course. Like so, she doesn't have skeleton anymore, right? So she will have to like find another chest piece, maybe tunic or something like that. She has the grasp. She has the Arcanine Skullcap. Usually snaps, but can also run creepers if she wants to. She has access to all the Runeblade cards, the ones that came out. So she has a very, very good matchup into Prism. Very good because Channel Mount buffs all your attacks by 3. Yeah. Channel Mount buffs all your attacks by 3, so everything's a popper. You have poppers coming out the wazoo, and I don't think Prism feels that great about trying to fatigue out the Briar either, because Briar doesn't have that clock. Briar can sit there, set up Channel Mount, wait for the right opportunity, and bust out 20 plus damage in multiple turns.
Briar can very effectively recur Channel Mount 4, 5, 6 times over, depending on, you're obviously running Pulse. Are you running Sotamaros as well? Because that's, you add those up, that's 7 copies of
usually
Mount Heroic.
I think you usually add the blues. So you add the blue Sotamaros, you can end up like using those.
The main target.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the next question becomes, what version of the deck are people going to show up with? Because there is that, the very wide, you run all the 0 cost, like all the lightning go agains. You get a lot of value out of all the Runeblade 0 cost go agains, whether they're attacks or non-attacks. But I would be curious to see the viability of like the old style heavy earth build, right? Where your bread and butter is Bramble Spark, Fuse, Pitch, Burgeoning, Rosetta, or something like that. You know what I mean?
I love it.
That's an oldie, yeah.
Well, it fuses with Bramble. It fuses with Bramble.
Yeah.
It then
stir the wildwood.
That was the best limited combo.
Yeah,
I remember.
They are right. Those are good, useful combos. The question is, I feel like if you do that, what you start trying to do is you start looking for 2-turn value out of Mount Heroic. Whereas, or sorry, not 2-turn, but I guess 3-turn. Right? You want to keep it alive by pitching 2 Earth cards on the second turn where it's around, so you can get a 3rd turn of value out of it.
Yes.
Because your attack actions tend to cost a little bit more.
Right.
That's fair.
And I think that could definitely be an option, and I think that might be an option that is stronger against other slower decks.
Yeah.
Because you're getting more value out of each card you play. You're less likely to deck out those kinds of things. I'm just not sure if it's going to be necessary, but I'd be curious to see it if it pops up.
We all would be.
I think I'm good with Briar and A, but I'm skeptical of her ability to beat Chane and Starvo. I think I would probably put her just underneath Prism, to be honest.
Okay. I probably would too.
Okay, yeah. Even though she's favorable
beats Prism.
into Prism.
She's favorable against Prism.
She's worse
that's not the list here. That list is for the meta.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's fine.
She's a yeah.
I like how you just snap in Lexi
Oh
at D,
no,
even though you know she's not
I
a D2.
disagree. I disagree on that Lexi.
No, he's
play.
just kidding.
I'm
He's
trolling.
just kidding.
I know
He's
Lexi's
being
up
facetious. He's
on the
being
up and up.
facetious here.
Yeah. I
No,
don't
so
play
Lexi
Lexi.
Lexi is
Yeah.
interesting deck. It's a deck that I
Here
honestly
you
didn't have
go,
a lot
Eric.
of. I'm not Yuki here, so we're looking at like a bunch of different builds with Lexi. I honestly didn't play a lot of Lexi before, but then I've been testing a fair amount of Lexi in the last like month and a bit. Just to like, it's one of those heroes I like to know every hero, at least like have some reps under them.
Mhm.
And so I've been trying to start to watch more videos of Lexi, to play more Lexi, the different ice, like the ice builds, the new lightning build that's coming out that people seem to really like with Rainrazor's Art of War. You've seen a lot in like Team League and stuff like that. So I've seen a lot more Lexi, and you know what? I think Lexi is one of those heroes that is very, very fun to play. She's Voltaire is a hell of a drug. I'm telling you, being able to like load 2 arrows and then fire with that last one you arsenaled the turn before. Oh, it feels great. I'm telling you, it feels great. But you know what doesn't feel great? Drawing it to triple Art of War and a Rain Razors. So have like different kind of swings because you want a high ceiling. And this is with like all these decks. If you sacrifice a little bit of, you got to sacrifice enough ceiling to get that consistency to a favorable spot for your play style, right? And so that really depends on like what your risk threshold is, really, right? And so I think with Lexi, the builds we're going to see at Pro Tour, in my opinion, will be a little bit of the ice build, like the old school kind of go lower to the ground, try to maybe a little bit taller, use cards like Weave Ice and stuff like that to like buff up an arrow, get an on hit on there, like a Chilling, a Blizzard, a Frostlock, or whatever, right? And really try to slow down the game state to be able to
so
like
the
chip in
aggro
damage.
killer kind of style, I guess.
The 100% the aggro killer. It'll do well against like Viserai. It'll do it decent against like Rune Blades. It'll do good against like Katsu probably. It's just very good into aggro. And then you have like
I don't think it's bad into Starvo. It just becomes a matter of, do I draw a brick hand, or do I draw a hand where I can't? Like, can Lexi go a game without drawing a hand that does not let her sufficiently disrupt getting Oaken Olded or Cripplinged, or that's the thing, right? And that does go back down to the risk threshold, the 3 of a kind into another 3 of a kind and some attack reactor, or whatever it ends up being, right?
You just lose.
And it's so difficult for anybody who has multiple deck building tensions, right? Because Lexi's got pitches, she's got elements, and she's got arrow versus non-arrow.
She's really hard to build.
She is very hard to build, but we've seen people do it before. And it wouldn't surprise me.
People do it again?
Yeah, I definitely think some people are going to do it again. I mean, you look at the North American national champs, you look at Yuki, you look at, I'm doing him a disservice by forgetting his name. I think it's Isaac
top 8 US Nats. Yeah, he top 8 US Nats with Lexi. And then he proceeded to 3 of a kind whiff. And so you're talking about
that's exactly what I was going to mention, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't think that was a failing of his deck building, and I don't think that was, it's a card game. Sometimes you draw the cards, and yeah, exactly. And I think while the deck building is difficult, I don't think it's going to be a limitation at Pro Tour. I think if there is a really, really strong Lexi build out there, I think somebody's going to find it, and I think they're going to show up with it. The question is, does that build do what it needs to do against the other people that show up?
Yeah.
Right? If you're building anti-Chane Lexi, it might look a little bit different from anti-Starvo Lexi. Yep. And then, of course, the other thing is, I mean, what the hell do you do against Prism, right? Like, you can
fire your arrows.
You can try to throw out all the destruction in the world. I mean, yeah, you can
need
try,
the action
but
points, I guess.
Is an arrow going to take down an angel? I doubt it.
Oh, wow, that's Cupid
nice
has
metaphor.
both. Let's be real. Like, you can have both. I think the only other thing I want to mention with Lexi is there is the lightning build running around, which tries to deal with Lexi.
With Prism.
It's Lexi's answer to Prism. Right. So you fire a whole lot that Prism can't deal with, and you're running like a lot of 0 cost 4 arrows. You're like maximizing on the Rain Razor Art of War strategy, and that deck can put out some damage. I have seen some crazy turns with that deck. Easy 30 plus damage turns. Endless Arrow is super good in that deck. But again, it's pros and cons depending on like how you side properly.
It really also depends against representation, like we've mentioned a couple times now. If Prism's high on the representation list,
and it's praying to gem, right? It's representation, praying to gem.
That goes without saying. You always got to do that.
I think with all of those considered, I think her Guardian matchup is still poor. I think she loses into Oldhim. She doesn't have a fun time into Starvo.
Right.
And because we will see Starvo, that will be a pretty decent piece of the pie.
She cannot be.
I don't think she can be that high. I think I'm putting her on high B.
High B. I was going to say the same thing. Higher than Viserai.
I like high B.
All right.
High B. So let's roll through a couple of these a little bit quicker.
We can go a bit faster on these ones. Prediction. Yeah.
Katsu, Taste the Wind. Katsu is just, oh man, I'm sorry, Nia, but this hero is. I remember we played a couple of games just to make sure like it wasn't like player skill. Like player skill can't outdo the fact that maybe all Katsus are just building or playing him wrong. And you know what? It's Katsu. His kit is just not there. His kit's just not there with everybody else. His armor is poo. It's really bad. You have one legendary to your name, Mask of Momentum. You're playing against Runeblades with a full set of legendary equipment. You're playing against Starvo with like 3 legendary equipment and Winter's Wail. You're just, it's a function of you not having enough good cards. And I think Katsu is a very strong deck in it by itself. It's a good aggro deck. However, it is not on the Runeblade tier to be able to take down Starvo. Adding in cards like Unmovable feels real bad because you want a low blue count. And all your 0 cost 4 reacts can only do you so much when you draw multiple per hand.
Yeah.
And so I'm just gonna say my rating, and then you guys can chime in here. But he is low B. I don't want to put him in C. But I'm gonna put him like one of the lower B tiers, essentially, because of that reason. I don't think he can keep up.
Yeah, I do disagree, or I disagree with your ranking. I agree with some of what you're saying. I agree. He can't keep up, and for that reason, I think he's a lot closer to low C. You say he's a good aggro deck, but of the aggro decks, he is the aggro deck. He is the archetypical. He struggles with blocking. I mean, outside of Flick Flack and that type of stuff. Well, back in Welcome to Wraith, he showed what aggro was. Here's a bunch of 2-block go again attacks that enable him to do all these things. But I think that basically every aggro deck that's come out since does what he does better. I mean, realistically speaking, he needs to work so much harder to get off his big high ceiling turns, to land a full Lord of Wind combo, let's say. And I feel like he struggles even to chain together what I think is the stronger deck, a bit lower to the ground where you're running, Scars and Twin Twisters and leg taps, and you're not necessarily looking for combo lines. You're looking for general aggro, but that just makes him block even worse. I don't think there's a dedicated aggro deck that is worse than Katsu, in all honesty. While I think he is the worst of the aggro, even though he is the most pure play of the aggro, because he doesn't have the unfair tricks that everybody else has picked up. I'm sure he'll pick up a couple in Uprising, because that seems to be the direction where things are going. But for the time being, I think he plays too honest of a game into people who have nasty tricks and too much armor.
Fair enough.
That's fair.
So high C, I guess it is. We'll average both you guys out, put them in the C tier somewhere.
Okay. High C is fine.
We can always adjust as more heroes come in, but let's move on to Dash next.
Dash. Dash is tricky. So I know people are going to be bringing Dash. There's a lot of people that play Dash that only play Dash, and that's what they're going to bring regardless of how good or bad she is. She is very interesting because there are a couple different ways you can build her now. I think her Everfest kit, like her expansion kit, was very on average reactive, as far as like they gave you cards like Signal Jammer and Dissolution Sphere to be able to deal with other decks. They didn't proactively help you achieve your kind of goal, unless your goal is to sit there, amass items, hit with pistol.
But that being said, they were good tools though.
Whoa, wait. There's some other cards that came into the meta. I'm not done yet. There are cards like T-Bone, Rotary Ram, Payload, which are very, very good aggro tools, right? And I think that helps both of her initial strategies. Like she had like the essentially high octane aggro boost to the moon, right? Where you really get good value of those high octane turns. You boost a bunch. Hell, maybe you throw in a maximum velocity if you feel spicy. Like it really depends on the kind of deck. But I think both of her lists are valid as far as like her more aggro focused deck got some really nice buffs in the form of like Payload's a very good card to finish off games with Dominate. Teklo Pounder is a very good item that produces higher aggro kind of value because it's an item that produces six power over 3 turns, right? So in aggro, you just start off with the Pounder, and you get, your first 3 turns with boost is just +2, which is very, very nice. And she can still output a very comfortable 15 to 20 plus damage per turn on not amazing hands, ignoring high octane. So I think she's a strong deck. I think same issue as Katsu is she's still a little bit too fair. And by fair, I mean that she's not Guardian or Runeblade. They got like a majority of the attention in the last couple sets. And I think into a lot of those matchups that like the Starvo matchup is not fun. It's just not a fun matchup. I mean, Rob played this out. It's just not a fun matchup. It got better post-ban. I can see her coming back in force. I can see someone cracking like a super good build with a super good strat and going off the play that nobody knows what build I'm going when I flip up Dash as a hero. If they assume I'm control and then go aggro, maybe they sided wrong kind of thing. I think the element of surprise is very strong. And for that reason, I'm going to put her in B, probably
a notch higher
above Viserai.
Yeah.
I think she's better because she's just more flexible than Viserai.
Yeah,
I don't know about Lexi. I think she's about the same as Lexi in my eyes. Like she's very good in it by herself. I think she's just a little bit too fair at the moment, which is a really odd thing to say, but that's just how I think about it.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. I do think she's very much in the same boat as Lexi in the sense that she's good into some of the top meta picks, but not into others. So if you're bringing her, you need to get the call right. So T-Bone has made high octane. Yeah, T-Bone has made high octane so just amazing into Prism if you can, find it before they can build their board state, which statistically you should be able to, right? Generally speaking. But like you said, it's tough into Starvo. I think even if you are running that full kind of aggro boost setup, even though he's not blocking as well anymore, it only takes that, 1 or 2 hand swing where he just, flips the nuts and goes, here we go, 11 dominated, I'll take your next turn from you as well, and then keep the chain going. So I agree, she's very much in that same thing with Lexi, but I do think she's in an interesting position. I don't know if I agree that she's going for the full surprise tactic, because I don't see a world in which anybody, or I don't know people, maybe there's crazier people out there than I know, but I don't know anybody who would show up with full control or full aggro. I think everybody's going to split the difference, go mid-range, because honestly, Dash is really good at doing that, right?
Let me tell you something. If I'm bringing Dash to Pro Tour, it's going to be full like boost to the wall, like just like let's have some fun, like let's just like go bananas, right? That's what I would. I wouldn't like. Don't do that if you don't want to do that. But it's just so much fun. Like oh my god, like Tackle Pounder aggro Dash is so fun. Is,
all right, you're running full aggro Dash. Are you running 76 or 75 cards in deck?
Well,
and then just boosting your way through all 75, or are you running?
You would run
60 in deck and then having 15 that let you pivot mid-range when you need to.
That depends. And if you run cards like Rotary Ram, that becomes to be a little bit easier because you can cycle that. You can cycle Overloop. It's a very good card in that situation. We'll have a Dash. We are playing a Dash CC game later to show off that kind of build. But cards such as Overloop that also cycle to the bottom of the deck, Rotary Ram cycling to the bottom of the deck, it can be a little bit easier to do that strategy essentially. And so I think
Absolutely, which I think only improves the strength of the mid-range strategy. Because, sorry, when I'm saying mid-range, I'm talking about mid-range in the 80, right? You've got a sideboard that lets you pivot from aggro to, quote, control, and maybe a little bit in between, right? Because I don't think at this point Dash, I don't think running the 75 card aggro pile is going to get you anywhere further than running, the 64 or 66 card aggro shell, right? You do have that extra space. Okay, let's bring in some of the D-reacts. Let's bring in some of the more unique tech pieces, a sneaky signal jammer here or there, whatever you think is going to help in the meta call that you're making, right?
yeah,
Which
no,
is
that's
why I
fair.
think that, you can expect Dash to show up with mid-range. Whether she sides mid-range into you, I think you'll probably have a decent idea of depending on your deck, right?
That's
I don't
reasonable.
think anybody's I don't think anybody's not playing a practice game against Dash if they're taking Pro Tour seriously.
Fair
I think
enough.
that's reasonable. I think
Yeah,
we can move on
I'm
to
okay with that. Yeah.
the other Bravo, the Showstopper. I don't have much to say about Bravo. He's just
Like,
the other
why play
Bravo
him
is
if you can
just.
play Starvo, kind of thing?
I'm sure Demos maybe has a
Oh,
reason
I
why
might
you
have,
should play him.
I
I
might
think
have just like speared
he's
Demos's heart
okay.
with that comment.
He look he's a good hero, but he hasn't gone the tools either in Everfest or recently that let him become the preeminent hero because Prism's still a thing, and he he just isn't. He just doesn't have that authority to really like. His play style is never usually as fast as people want it to be. Like people like to run like E strikes and stuff like that, and I think that like going against Bravo's character, of course, but still, it's a matter of like I don't think there's a reason to play him at the moment. I think there's a lot of better choices as far as his strategy. Dominate on a stick is great, but I think everyone's running like heavy D-reacts for Starvo, and if everyone's prepping for Starvo, Bravo is just not,
Yeah, prepping for
it's
Starvo
not
means you're
it.
prepping for Bravo as well.
Yeah, your sideboard probably handles Bravo just as well. So I'm putting him in C tier,
Yep, fair enough.
right there with Katsu. I don't know if Demos wants to shove him somewhere else. I don't have that much to say about him.
I was going to shove him right beside Viserai because I think they both have the same issue. They're good decks, but why would you play them over the other hero in their class?
Yeah, okay.
That's
Right?
I was
reasonable.
comfortable
I'll
with
put him
that
next
too.
to Viserai.
Yeah, I was comfortable with that.
Honestly, if you look at that, if you look at the board, you look at everybody ranked above Bravo right there. I think he smashes Viserai right now. I'm gonna assume like an average mid-rangey build where you've got Zealous and Rouse in the sideboard. You've got 3 little red D-reacts, and you've got 3 costed red D-reacts, right? Very much the amalgamation, the average Bravo spreading himself out, maybe a little bit too thin in some places. That type of build. I think he beats Vis. I think he beats Dash quite handily these days, unless Dash is going full control.
Right.
Because you can go so like Zealous belting against Dash is keeping up with her aggro, and then you can follow it up with disruption on the next turn. It works out quite well, and it's been a bit, it's been largely that way since Monarch, right? Lexi is, I think, very build and pilot dependent for the pair. I think it depends on who brings what deck, so I'm going to go ahead and call that one even. I know there are Lexi decks that smash Bravo, and I know that there are Bravo decks that smash Lexi, and I know that there's players who can smash or get smashed with either or both.
Yep.
I'm going to call that even. I think he's got a good matchup into Briar, in all honesty. He can survive so long as he puts out, some type of interruption to stop her from getting channel mount out for that 5th, 6th, 7th time. Suffers massively into Prism unless you go for 9 lead the charge, at which point you're softening everything else, I think, a bit too much. And I think he does okay into Chane. Or let me rephrase. I think he will beat a mediocre Chane. I think he will beat a good Chane. I think he will struggle against top tier chains.
Fair enough.
Okay, I like that breakout there,
Unless
but
you,
okay, fair enough.
yeah, because I mean he has a lot of good tech against Chane, but if the Chane player identifies it, they've got ways to play around it that are both in and out of their sideboard, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so even though he's low in B,
Yeah.
he's got a decent matchup into just about everybody there. But why would you play him when you could play the straight up better version of him
Yep.
who gets free go again and a +2 and doesn't need to pay for his dominate? You know what I mean?
Yep. 100%
Yeah.
agree. All right.
Yeah,
Let's
I
move
think
on to the other guy.
Oldhim.
The other
He got
guardian here. Yeah.
and they hit him. They hit him with Autumn's touch. He didn't have an aggro strat to
He
go
didn't.
back
He
on.
didn't do anything. This poor guy.
He did it. He didn't have crayons. Like the man had pencils. He was rocking with pencils when the other guy had crayons. That's
Yeah.
not fair. It's black and white versus color.
Same
So-
boat as Bravo, I guess. Like, why play him if you can play Starvo, kind of deal.
Yeah, like Oldhim's hero ability is amazing versus aggro decks. He's the preeminent aggro crusher, but it's
Yeah.
just a matter of like there's not that many reasons
little
to
higher
play
than
him
Bravo.
at the moment.
Yeah.
If the meta is like 50+% Chane, yeah, sure, bring Oldhim or like Briar too, but there's no guarantee on what breakout the meta will be.
It's
so
true.
I don't
There's a
think
rise
bringing
of
Oldhim,
aggro, which might make him more favorable, but again, Starvo
Yeah.
can just do the
well,
same.
yeah, and then you bring Oldhim. Prism's gonna be there. You just lose. Like you can't consistently have a great
Exactly.
win rate versus Prism.
Prism's
It's just
gatekeeping
not.
him, yeah.
It's just not in his. It's not really what he's built for.
Yep.
Which is not
Yeah,
his fault.
so-
It's really not his fault. He's a meta dependent hero, and I think that
Yeah.
is hasn't changed.
I think for Pro Tour purposes, I think I'm going to put him in C. I think I'm going to put him
Okay.
above Katsu,
Okay.
but
I
purely on
would
the
agree.
basis that you need to go X2 to advance in
Okay.
a high level tournament, right? Which means
X3 on
you
day
mean-
one of the Pro Tour.
Yeah. Okay.
okay, X3 on day one. Either way,
No.
you've got very few losses to work with. If
Mhm.
your gamble is I'm leaving it up to Gem to either give me heavily favored or insta loss matches,
Always a strategy.
You don't like insta loss?
I don't like insta loss.
Okay.
Then
Good to-
I
duly
think
noted.
I think you're playing with a fringe niche deck, and I think that needs to get bumped down a tier. And I specifically say that because I think he's got such a borderline impossible time against Starvo. He's got such an impossible time against Prism. You know, even if Prism does water down her auras, it's so hard for Oldhim to compete. You know, you can side heavy aggro on Oldhim, which is probably the best way to build him in general because he has so much built-in defense. You don't really need it in your deck. But then you're good into the Rune Blades, right? So you're too good, too bad in the top 4 heroes.
Mhm.
I'm not leaving 50-50 chances when I need to win 75% of my games or more.
That's reasonable. So moving on to Rhinar, the Reckless Rampage. I don't
Yeah.
remember what his title is,
That-
but it's
you got
we're,
it.
lo-
Yep.
we're looking at Rhinar here.
Mhm.
Oh, Rhinar. I'm gonna
I mean,
move.
Just
I'm
really
gonna move
bad
this
into
to.
aggro.
I'm gonna move this to like yeah, he's
He
good
can't
versus
beat any of the
Oldhim.
Rune Blades, really. If
Like, he's-
Oldhim's
yeah,
down
he-
here, he can't really do much. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think Rhinar is definitely also a meta call hero. He just hasn't got the tools he needed in Everfest. Most of those cards sucked, other than Big Swing.
Yeah.
And
Wild
like
Wild
Swing
Ride
big.
is amazing.
Wild Ride is
he did
good.
get some of the more go again strategy picks. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, but like if you're gonna
Yeah,
run
I-
like more aggro, go again,
Yeah.
Rhinar, then just go run Runeblade and save yourself.
Yeah,
the
that's
trouble.
mostly
Like,
because of the intimidates to go into control.
I don't know, what do you think,
Exactly.
Dimos?
Right. Rhinar limits control.
Mhm.
And I don't see any real control heroes up at the top there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he's got a good matchup into Prism, sure. Even that, Prism's got tricks to make it a lot more difficult
Yeah, it's
for
not
him,
even
or
that
to force him-
one-sided. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. But everybody else just they want to keep 5-card hands and they can do more damage than he does. So his
Right.
hero ability plays into their plan. It's unfortunate that my favorite angry guy is just the aggro metas are keeping him down.
Yeah. He would have to be like
one day,
amazing.
one day.
Yeah, he'd have to
Yeah.
be amazing into Prism
One
to
day
even bump him a
Oldhim
bit.
and Dash. Exactly.
meta,
One day
and
Oldhim
then
and
Rhinar
Dash
comes
are gonna
up.
make it to the top, and then Reiner's gonna bonk him on the head, and it'll be
Uh-huh.
lovely.
Fair
But
enough.
Well-
I think that's where he is.
I agree.
Dory is
Dory.
interesting. I think like there's two builds, right? There's Axe build and there's Dawnblade, but I think Axis used to go fairly control based, and you can build that aggro, and then Dawnblade was just Dawnblade, right? I think
Yeah.
Dawnblade. So the thing with Dawnblade counters is like Dory is still a deck with a lot of armor, and so you're still rocking 7 armor. You still have like a decent amount of agency. Her main issue is that a lot of the warrior cards, the good warrior cards in Everfest, are targeting dual hand, and they were really more for Kasai than anything else, in my opinion, right? She got like there was just like the Majestics were like what Oath of Steel, Shatter, like a lot of these like they don't really help. I think Dory might get a boost with a new classic battle set. Like she might get some newer cards. Like she might be nice and fresh. Yeah, but I don't think at the moment she has enough to really deal with a lot of like at least half of the higher level decks, right? Like I think she can be decent.
Fundamentally, she's still too fair, right? And for that reason, I think she goes into the Katsu tier, right? She used to be good against aggro because she had that snowballing effect. I don't think she gets that same mileage against the Rune Blades because they can do so much and have so much armor to back it up, right? Starvo disrupts her too much. And Prism just, I mean, you can do everything in the world right. You can have 10 Dawnblade counters and then lose it all once Arclight Sentinel is drawn for the first time.
Yeah, you can't snowball against Prism. Yeah.
It's that simple. Azalea, like Viserai, like Bravo, why would you play her when
Lexi is right there?
When the better one is available. Well, I mean, okay, we say this, people immediately dismiss Azalea, and you know what? Fair enough. But
you know what? If
the anti-aggro cheap disruption is, it's normally good against Chane. It's good against Briar. It's got, little bits and bobs against Starvo, but it's just worse than Lexi, who does the same thing. Lexi has higher damage or better disruption. It's your choice. And Azalea's hanging out. I don't think there's enough, relevant defense reactions to make Dreadbore relevant. Rain Razors are nice, but they're better in Lexi because Lexi shoots more arrows. I'm trying to think of the other tools she got during Everfest.
I will say one thing for Azalea she has going for it. She's good into Chane. She is good into Chane. I know maybe that's not a saving grace, but if you literally only see Chane, you're doing good for yourself. So maybe the call for Azalea is you pray to God Cheb gives you all Chane, and then you go from there.
And that goes back to the Oldhim argument of if you're relying on Cheb to give you your 50% to win 75% of games, Azalea is the same thing, but with worse math, right?
I think we've got
Kano is a bold meta call.
You're good at Rune Blades. Like you're very good into Rune Blades. You could definitely race like those bands didn't hit CC. Kano wasn't touched in CC. You had a good matchup into Rune Blades. That hasn't changed. Wildfire is a hell of a card. Your burst is super good. I can't imagine many decks are bringing triple Narrune nowadays. And like the only major issue I see with Kano is Starvo. Starvo, Prism are your biggest issues. Unfortunately, if that's going to be
if you can't compete with the top
third of the meta,
2 decks, then
if that's going to be a third of the meta, then I don't think Kano makes any sense to play. But like if you see Rune Blades and see a lot of aggro, you could probably outrace. Probably, not always. Obviously, it takes a lot of reps. It takes the right build. Not everyone can do it. However, he has good matchups. Like I think he's still like low B, maybe.
I like where he is in B. I like where Rob put him because he's in B with the other kind of meta call heroes,
right?
With the ones who, when things go right, they go right enough. You can do whatever you want. And I think it's fair to put him above the heroes in strong classes that just aren't the best hero, right? There's a reason to pick Kano. I don't necessarily see a reason to pick Viserai or Bravo.
Fair.
So I like him where he is there.
All right.
And then
Levia.
My only hesitation on him
Boltyn.
now. Yeah.
Sorry.
My only hesitation on Kano now is, it's a little bit easier for your opponents to use Skullcap if you're not careful, because Wildfire spreads damage across the turn. whereas your old kills might be forked for 12,
Right.
kind of thing. But realistically speaking, if you're bringing Kano to Pro Tour, you're well practiced enough to not fall for the things that I've fallen for in my couple games of practice.
Yeah.
Right?
It's reasonable.
100%.
All right, so we got Boltyn up next.
Yeah.
I think Boltyn's really cool. I think he falls for the thing. He is simultaneously too fair and too card hungry.
He's too vulnerable. Yeah.
Is there a reason to play him over
over
Bravo and Viserai? Probably.
I think he firmly goes into C.
Firmly in C.
Probably above Katsu.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I think there is Raiden versus like the Axes, right? But I think assuming Raiden, his aggro is quite nice, but as Dimos kind of talked about here, he's super card hungry. He's super vulnerable to disruption. You need your one card hands are just like there isn't any. You don't have one card hands because you need to charge usually.
That's
right?
fair. Yeah.
So, needing to have 2-3 cards plus in a meta that has on hits that punish you for that, and you're not running like you have Soul Shield and stuff like that. You are a light hero. You do have some tools. However, if you want to play that style, just play a better deck at the moment.
Fair enough.
I mean, on the upside, you're not terrible into Prism. You're not useful stuff. I think the downside is a single Frostbite turns those 5-card turns that you desperately need into 4-card turns that are really lackluster, and you ate 13 damage off of Starvo the turn before.
And the biggest,
I just don't think it's tenable.
Another big reason is you're so bad at Chane. I think you're just so bad into Chane. You turn on his Soul Reaping. His Soul Reaping is actually active versus you. Think about that. Like, I don't know.
As if it wasn't busted
if it wasn't
bad
it's
good enough.
It's
you don't
like,
need to
that
give
shit
it more
has
strength.
go again now. You can't get cards out of Soul like Prism can. Like, anyways, that's just like a minor point. But rolling on to Levia.
Okay, yeah.
I know. I think I watched Matt's set recently, and he said Levia is actually pretty decent. But
I was gonna say the same. Yeah.
But then I saw top 8 for that tournament, and it was mostly Starvo. So, but that was pretty bad.
That was pretty bad.
The one thing I really, really, really want to see at a Pro Tour is
Levia.
Is some Levia representation, right? I sincerely hope that if that Manzant goes and just brings, I don't know, his own camera and films every single game that he plays, right? Because that's what I want to see. I don't really care about Starvo versus Prism versus Runeblade anymore.
We've seen enough.
You don't want to see the Starvo mirror? Oh, I don't know, man. That's a pretty...
No, I think Levia has a lot of potential, right? And I think that there are those diehard Levia players and fans of Levia that are pushing those limits. And I don't necessarily think this is her meta, but I think the sheer amount of discovery that's gone into what she can do is genuinely impressive, right? There are plans that help to defeat all of these other heroes here. I just don't think it's quite enough to get her where she needs to go.
It's reasonable.
I mean, she can. I think she's fine into Briar, or like decent enough if you've got your specific plans. I don't think she's in a great spot versus Prism right now. And into Starvo, I mean, you can husk and your big D reacts only go so far without diluting things too much.
Yeah.
So I think she's become a lot more advanced, but I also think that this may not be her specific moment.
That's reasonable.
I'd probably put her towards the top of C.
Okay. Yeah, I was between here and here, so yeah, let's go top of C then.
Yeah, and part of that is just because some of your strategies do involve high blood debt, right? You will need to use that damage ceiling and run that risky game to beat some of these matchups. Which means you draw one wrong hand, it all goes to shit.
Right.
Okay.
But I think Levia stock is going up, but next quarter.
It hasn't peaked yet. It's not time to sell yet. Okay, that's fair. Right. So Starvo is the last one here. I think we all kind of agree he's still in the A tier. He didn't lose that much ability. Autumn's Touch, Awakening, I think he's still very strong. He still has Crown Seeds. He still has a lot of armor. He still has a lot of Oak and Olds.
Yeah.
I think he's right up there with Prism. I put him right next to Chane.
There you go.
Yeah, he's the star of the show. He's the man of the hour.
He's the best
I
deck.
think the
I
Autumn
think he's
Touch
the overall
ban.
best deck.
Yeah, I would, until proven otherwise, I would agree.
Yep.
I think Autumn's Touch bans and Awakening bans were reasonable. I think they were solid. I think they give other decks a chance.
Mhm.
I just think that he gets so much off of that ability that you need to run a marathon just to catch up with him, and then you can play a game with him.
I agree. Dimos, who's winning Pro Tour? Give me the dark horse also.
Who's winning Pro Tour?
Not the person, the hero.
Either.
Yeah.
Hero, I'm gonna say Starvo. I think globally, I couldn't give you a name. There's a lot of top players and a lot of top players who are all going to crash together at once here.
I just wanted to know Starvo. Who's your dark horse? Come into top 8. Who's top 8 in Pro Tour that nobody would have expected?
Dark horse to top 8 Pro Tour.
Yep. First hero comes to mind.
Sneaky Dash, or Sneaky Ice Lexi. One of the two.
Whoa, you can't.
I think people are going to show. All right, Sneaky Ice Lexi. I think people are going to show up with a little bit of those kind of meta call decks. I think enough people are going to get it right, and then I think 1 or 2 people are going to get, that little gem blessing that lets them get to where they need to go to make that top 8.
Awesome.
Fair. My Pro Tour pick, Chane. I think there's going to be a Chane player that has the right list at the right time with the right gem. That's it. There's going to be enough of them. They're going to come out of the woodworks now that Viserai's gone. My dark horse, I'm going to pick the other one that Dimos didn't pick, that I made him choose between. So I'm going to pick Dash.
Yeah.
I think a Sneaky Dash will come in here. I think Dash is very strong. There's a lot of good Dash mains out there. I think she has the tools. She just needs a little bit of luck and a whole lot of boosting to get on there. Rob, what do you think?
And for me, it's going to be Chane winning the tournament, and I will add Lexi as my dark horse. I think she's quite good.
All right, fair enough. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you like the content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow our Twitter. This will be up on Spotify. Appreciate Dimos coming on here and giving his thoughts. As always, appreciate you, Rob. And with that, wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.